Hello. When you see a person at a particular point in their life, or you see a country in a particular stage of its development, or you see a season, it's easy to think that it's always been that way and always will be that way, but we're constantly in flux. Since we live a temporal existence, we experience change, and this presentation is to help you think ahead by starting at the age of 65. So we're going to take a look at what I'm calling a mature investor. I'm going to use the little Monopoly guy to illustrate this. And to understand how this person gets to this point, we're going to go back to when they were 25 years old. We're going to go back 40 years. But let's take a look at them right now when they're 65. How are they doing? Well, their primary personal focus is to invest in relationships and their community. They're they don't have to worry about money. They've got $1 million in diversified portfolio, most of it in a Roth IRA, or at least it's most of their income is tax free or tax preferred. They're collecting Social Security and drawing $5,000 a month out of the diversified portfolio, which is going to be about $60,000 a year that they're going to draw off of that. And but they have monthly income of $6,800 because of the Social Security benefits that they're collecting. They don't have any debts. They've got a home that's comfortable for entertaining. They have mutual funds and a Roth IRA, as I said, and they have furnishings and a vehicle, and they can live and focus on other things other than money because their financial situation is all set. So that's them at age 65. Besides the money that they're drawing off of their retirement nest egg and Social Security, they might also have some other income that might be the case. So if you, for instance, they might own rental properties and collect rent there and have a some responsibilities maintaining or looking after that. So whether they want to do that was probably would have meant that they bought the rental properties or maintained those rental properties or established themselves as landlords years ago. The fact that you are, if you're 65 years old and have rental properties, you're probably not new at it. Same thing with the business interests. You might have some sort of share or interest in a business where you either have some work or some income that might come in there, maybe a side job or a job that you're doing because you enjoy it and you get paid a little bit. Maybe you're still working because you love it. And even though you could retire, you choose not to retire at this time. Plus, you might have a spouse, assets, and their income could add to that too and make that all possible. So let's go back not 40 years yet. We're going on our way back in time. Let's think about what that person was, what situation were they in just 5 years ago, right? So 5 years ago, they were not a millionaire. They had assets of 650,000 in a diversified portfolio, and by allowing that to grow and invest, and they didn't draw off of that during the last 5 years. They added to it. In fact, during those last 5 years, they had a little bit of debt when they were 60. They were had a home equity loan that they were paying off. They had a net worth of just shy of $1 million. They were earning their monthly income from a job that they were doing, but they already had their home and they had their furnishings, and their primary financial focus at that time was to be financially independent. They still needed a paycheck to get out of debt, and they were 60 years old, and they knew that they were going to be all set up by the time they were 65, but they were in the home stretch, you might say. So just looking back and noticing that this person who's 60 years old and in this situation is in this very favorable position because of what they did 35 years ago. When they were 25 years old, they got started on something. Now, some of the actions that they're taking is they take the risk tolerance quiz and rebalance their portfolio every year. They continue to contribute every month to the maximum allowed into their Roth IRA, and they don't run up any other debts. They use a credit card for its rewards and convenience, but they pay off the credit card at the end of every month. They stay in budget. Those three key actions are something that they're in the habit of now when they're 60, but they had to get in the habit of many years ago in order to be in that shape. Now let's go further back. Let's go 20 years more back, 25 years from the millionaire point. This person, when they're 40 years old, they were primarily focused on growth. Their primary personal focus was develop work and social relationships and networking and so forth. They're 40 years old. They have only $80,000 in their diversified portfolio. They have a home, but they have that home is heavily mortgaged with $180,000 that is on there, and they still have $10,000 that they're paying off on their college loan at age 40. They have a net worth of $80,000 though, because when you take a look at all of their assets minus their debts, they were in that kind of a situation. You can see that there's some of the details are this is described in broad strokes. They have a monthly income that they're earning is $3,000 before taxes. They're paying taxes on what they earn, so they have to figure out how to live on $2,700 a month and stay within budget. One of the things that is in their budget is to save $300 a month into their Roth IRA. By doing that, they will be in great shape by the time they're 60 and 65. But this person at age 40, if they do these actions, then they will set themselves up very nicely for the future, right? They should invest inside of a Roth IRA in 70% in a no-load stock index fund and 30% in a no-load bond index fund, and doing that will be there. So not every 40-year-old makes good decisions, and here we have a list of, different people representative of that. You get to choose where you're going to be, and in order to be in this situation when you're 40, before you're 40, you have to do some things to get set up for that. So I'll go back to 5 years before that point. Their primary focus was at age 35 was to buy a house. They didn't own a home yet. They wanted to establish a base of operations and join a community at age 35. And their assets, all they had at this point was $60,000 in their diversified portfolio they had put into the Roth IRA. And they're going to take out half of that money to use as a down payment to buy a $215,000 house. You'll see that 5 years later, that house has appreciated slightly in value to a $225,000 house. So we're not counting on the house being a major growth asset, but we do expect it to withhold its value to some degree. If you use $30,000 to buy a home, then that means you're going to have to borrow $190,000 since it's a $215,000 house. You also have and you got to furnish it and all the closing costs and things like that. So the $20,000 college loan debt that they have when they were 35. So they have a net worth at age 35 of $35,000. If you took a look at this person, would you know that 30 years later they were going to be a millionaire? No, but because of what they're doing as far as their actions, for instance, they're using a tax loophole with the IRA to make use of that, and it was a great saving vehicle. And what they're doing is continuing to contribute into their Roth IRA. At this time, when they're 35, they're contributing $250 a month. That you see that when they were 40, they increased their contributions, but and also they were being more aggressive at age 35, putting more into stock, less into bonds. And these, in the sea of people 35 years old, how many of them are actually doing these things and being aggressive with their contributions and actually doing something about paying off their debt, avoiding serious debt, building up their net worth, and going towards long-term financial goals? Let's go back a little bit further. Here's somebody that should look familiar to you. We have an investor, the same investor, mind you, at age 25. That person who at age 65 was a millionaire, a person who was doing very well at age 60, when they were 25 years old, right? Their primary financial focus was to get on that right road to financial freedom, to get out of debt, start saving, and start investing. But they hadn't started investing anything at that point. Their primary personal focus was to be able to stand up on their own, to be independent, to able to help others by being capable and self-reliant themselves. So at age 25, what was this person's financial situation? Well, they didn't have any material assets. They had no car, they had no home, they had no savings. They they did have blessed with being in America, with a good mind and a good body, and they didn't abuse it. They had lots of debt, but and maybe they had a car loan, maybe they had credit cards. They have negative net worth because their debts are greater than their assets. But they do have a job, and that's good. They have $2,200 that they take in before taxes, but they're paying taxes on that leaves them with just under $2,000 a month to live off of. You can easily see how that would not be enough if you don't budget, and it is enough if you're frugal and you have take the long road. So here are some of the actions that this 25-year-old takes. They get out of debt by attacking high interest debt first. They pay the minimum on everything to maintain good credit rating, but aggressively pay off high interest loans. After that, then they roll the payments that they were making on the high interest loans onto the next highest loans, and so forth. There's an illustration that I have to show you what I mean. Let me see here. I have to cut that out. That's on that's another one. Another action is to budget. Use the scheduling tool to use the hours in their week to the greatest effect. They cut out wasted time in order to get high value from work, get high value from rest, get high value from their socializing, get high value from their exercising, get high value from their family time. Make sure that what they're doing is getting a good reward. They're learning how to get the greatest oomph and payoff from the efforts that they're putting in. And they're being deliberate, meaning they're deciding to do things rather than letting things happen. Another action that this 25-year-old is starting to move along and then developing habits in is to budget their revenue and expenses. So many people are really good about watching how they earn money, but they're not very good about how they spend money. So you start off by paying yourself first, and you do that by making those contributions into that Roth IRA. They prioritize anything that they want. They don't think about whether they just want it or not, but whether they want A more than B, and whether they want B more than C, and whether they want C more than D. And that way they don't spend their money and time on D if they haven't gotten A and B and C yet. They compromise on less valuable desires. So even though it would be great to have the deluxe coffee, let's say, that's costs $8, you might say I'm happy with a 50-cent cup of coffee and save my $7.50 to put towards something that I really value, that I value long term, like putting a down payment for a home or a car, getting out of debt, or something like that. So the coffee is gone, in an hour anyway, and so what you do is you approach your life realistically and pragmatically, where you balance the future desires with your current desires. So certainly, getting yourself a nice coffee is not out of the question. You just want to consider whether it's a priority for you compared to other things that you also want, because you by fighting the impulses and being deliberate, then when you do buy that coffee or you do have a treat, then you really appreciate it rather than it being quickly forgotten and just done out of habit or impulse. Make a monthly budget when you're reasonable to inform and guide your daily decisions when you're less reasonable. Another action that a 25-year-old should start going on is starting to invest in mutual funds and designate the account as a Roth IRA. They should plan their tax situation and use an employer-sponsored savings plan if they have one at their work, like a 403B plan or a employer-sponsored retirement savings plan or a 401k. They can also use their Roth IRA on the outside also. And then begin saving for a down payment on a house. They'll aggressively pay off the debt until they're debt free and make extra payments to the Roth IRA as a savings vehicle for a down payment. And I didn't have to put a picture in there. A lot of my students are even younger than 25 or maybe around the age of 25. And you can easily picture yourself how at some point in your life you'll be like this person. And if you take these actions and start on the road, you will progress along, living your life and enjoying the days, and knowing that in years to come, you'll be at a point where you'll not have to worry about money in the same way as so many others do who fail to plan. Thank you very much.